I still remember the way the sunlight fell through the kitchen window that morning, gilding the linoleum floor in golden streaks, yet I felt nothing but cold shadows creeping over me. My parents laughed across the table, their voices warm and bright, a contrast to the gnawing pit in my stomach. I held my fork tighter than necessary, pretending to taste the scrambled eggs, but really, I was bracing myself for the inevitable. "You'll never have a house like your sister's," my mother said, her tone light, almost teasing. My father chuckled, shaking his head as if confirming some universal truth. "Your sister's going to be the envy of everyone, and you'll do fine, I'm sure." The words sliced through me like knives coated in honey. I forced a smile, nodded, and chewed slowly, pretending they had landed somewhere harmless, like on my tongue rather than in my heart. My sister Leela sat across from me, radiant as ever, hair shining like spun gold, laughter spilling from her lips like music. I hated her in that moment, hated her effortless perfection, hated how my parents' eyes lingered on her as if she were a masterpiece they'd created, and I was merely an afterthought. It wasn't that my sister didn't deserve praise. She was brilliant, charming, beautiful. But the way my parents compared me to her made me feel invisible, a shadow in someone else's story. Every accomplishment, every small triumph of mine, was met with polite nods or faint acknowledgement. Yet when Leela achieved the same thing, the house seemed to vibrate with applause. I remember hiding in my room that afternoon, the sunlight fading behind the curtains, curling into myself on the bed. The walls were paper, thin, the furniture hand. Me, downs from garage sales, yet my sanctuary was here in the quiet, where no one's laughter could pierce me. I traced patterns on the wall with my fingers, imagining a different life, a life where I mattered, where my victories could shine without comparison. By the time I turned 16, the comparisons had become almost unbearable. Birthdays were particularly brutal. "Your sister got a scholarship to the Arts Academy. What about you?" my mother would ask, the disappointment in her voice carefully veiled beneath a smile. Dinner conversations inevitably spiraled into discussions of Leela's grades, her invitations to exclusive clubs, her latest achievements. I spoke less and less, because every word felt like it would be swallowed by the echo of her successes. Yet, in those quiet moments of solitude, a different emotion began to take root alongside the sorrow. It wasn't just resentment, it was a simmering, determined anger, a fire that whispered to me when no one was listening, "You'll show them. One day, they'll see." I didn't yet know how, and I didn't yet know when, but I could feel the slow gathering of strength inside me, like roots deepening under winter soil, waiting to burst into spring. I became meticulous about my plans, my dreams, cataloging every skill, every idea, every ambition my parents had dismissed. I watched Leela from the shadows, not out of envy alone, but to understand what made her shine, and to learn how to outshine her in ways my parents would never expect. I carried my heartbreak like a secret treasure, a quiet, private promise to myself. One day I wouldn't just match her. I would surpass her. That night, lying in bed, I let myself cry not out of weakness, but out of necessity. Tears of anger, of longing, of betrayal. But when I wiped them away, I saw a new reflection in the mirror, not a shadow, not an invisible child, but someone who could rise from this quiet humiliation and craft her own destiny. A destiny they would never see coming. Leaving home was like stepping out of one world into another, a world where the echoes of laughter and scorn didn't follow me. I packed my life into 2 worn suitcases, each item a reminder of the invisible girl I had been. College dorms smelled of bleach and ambition, a far cry from the warm, judgmental hum of my family kitchen. Here, no one reminded me I would never be like my sister. Here, I could be whoever I wanted, or at least, whoever I was willing to fight to become. The first few months were brutal. The dorm room was tiny, with peeling paint and a single flickering light, and the cafeteria food was barely edible. I worked part-time at a cafe, my hands raw from endless dishwashing, my body exhausted from the grind of classes, exams, and long nights of studying. I earned every penny, not just for tuition, but for the tiny glimmers of independence I craved. Every late, night shift, every paper I painstakingly wrote. Every small victory in my courses became a quiet act of rebellion against the shadow I had lived under for so long. At first, I doubted myself constantly. My classmates seemed so confident, so naturally gifted. Sometimes I would stand at the library window, watching them stride past, laughter spilling into the night, and wonder if I would ever belong. But each doubt was met with a whisper I had learned to hear only in my solitude. You'll show them. You will rise. I began taking courses my sister would never consider: finance, architecture, design. Skills that felt like keys to a world my parents had never opened for me. I stayed up until the clock read 2 a.m., drawing floor plans by hand, analyzing real estate trends, learning how money moved in circles of power. Each tiny skill felt like a secret victory, a small step toward a dream I barely allowed myself to articulate out loud. My own home, my own space, my own identity that wasn't measured against Leela's perfection. Money was scarce. I lived on instant noodles, old thrift, store finds, and rides I could afford only because I walked whenever possible. I saved every dollar, sometimes foregoing nights out with friends, sometimes skipping coffee, because even a few cents mattered. It wasn't glamorous, but there was a strange joy in knowing that I was building something no one could take away. My sister could flaunt her accolades, my parents could dismiss me, but here, in this quiet grind, I was sovereign. Slowly, opportunities began to open. A client noticed my meticulous design work during an internship, offering me freelance projects. Another professor recommended me for a scholarship. Every small success added a brick to the foundation I was laying, and though I never spoke of it at home, each brick carried a quiet promise. One day they would see. One day they would know that the girl they doubted could create something they had only ever dreamed of. And yet there was loneliness. Success was often solitary. Watching peers celebrate together while I hoarded my victories in silence was bitter. But I reminded myself constantly, loneliness now meant triumph later. Every sacrifice, every rejection, every no I endured was a step closer to a life they would not dare dismiss. By the time I graduated, I had transformed. Not into someone like my sister, whose brilliance had always seemed effortless, but into someone who had clawed her way from invisibility to competence, from ridicule to power. I could feel the difference in the way I walked, in the way I held myself. I was no longer a shadow. I was a force quietly gathering strength. And as I signed the papers for my first modest apartment, a tiny but tangible victory, I allowed myself a private smile. Soon, I thought, tracing the edges of the contract with my fingers, you'll see. Soon, they will see what I've built without their approval. And when they do, the thought lingered, sweet and sharp, like champagne on the tongue. Revenge was still far off, but the foundation was laid, invisible yet unshakable, like roots beneath the earth waiting for spring. The first time I stood on the plot of land I had saved, for my chest swelled with a mixture of disbelief and triumph. It was nothing more than a stretch of uneven earth, wild grass swaying in the wind, a handful of trees that had survived decades of neglect. But to me, it was everything. Here, no one had ever told me I would fail. No one had whispered that I could never have what my sister possessed. Here, I held the power to shape my own world. The weeks that followed were relentless. Architects, builders, designers, they all became part of my carefully orchestrated plan. I pored over blueprints late into the night, tweaking every detail until the house reflected not just functionality, but the essence of me, strong, meticulous, elegant without ostentation. Marble counters gleamed under the imagined light, warm wooden floors curved through open spaces, and every corner carried intention, a whisper of the life I'd fought so hard to create. Every brick I ordered, every nail hammered, felt like a small victory against the years of doubt and dismissal. I remembered the mornings at my parents' kitchen table, the cruel laughter, the words that had wounded me like poison. And now, with every stroke of paint, every light fixture installed, every room shaped by my hands or my vision, I was rewriting my story. I wasn't just building a house. I was building a monument to resilience, a quiet declaration that I had arrived. People around me began to notice the change in me. Colleagues, friends, even distant acquaintances commented on my poise, the quiet authority I carried. Confidence isn't loud. It grows in subtle ways, in the curve of your smile, in the steadiness of your gaze, in the way you refuse to be dismissed. For the first time, I felt visible in a world outside my parents' judgment, and it tasted sweeter than any applause I had ever imagined. And yet, the most satisfying part wasn't the admiration I received. It was the anticipation. I imagined my parents' faces, Leela's smug expression frozen mid-sentence when they finally saw what I had accomplished. The idea made my chest tighten with a heady mixture of excitement and something sharper, revenge, not cruel or malicious, but precise, elegant, and devastatingly effective. There is a special satisfaction in silence, in showing someone proof without a word, in letting reality deliver what years of criticism could not. I walked through the house on completion day, barefoot, feeling the smooth wood beneath my feet. Each room told a story, the study where I had plotted my rise, the kitchen where I had planned celebrations I would hold for myself, the living room bathed in soft afternoon light where I imagined friends laughing without comparison or judgment. This house was my triumph, my sanctuary, my declaration that the girl they had underestimated was no longer invisible. There were moments, standing in the doorway of the master bedroom, or tracing the stair railing with my fingers, when I could almost hear their voices. "You'll never have a house like your sister's." I closed my eyes and let the memory settle not as a wound, but as fuel. Every decision I made in this house, every detail chosen with care, was a subtle retort to the years of dismissal. I invited friends to visit, seeing their eyes light up, their admiration genuine and unprompted. But my greatest satisfaction remained private, tucked deep in my chest, waiting for the day when it would be revealed to the ones who had laughed at me. The house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was the culmination of years of perseverance, sacrifice, and quiet planning. It was my triumph over doubt, over invisibility, and over the cruel comparisons that had haunted me. As the sun dipped below the horizon, spilling gold across polished floors, I stood at the entrance, hand resting on the doorframe, and whispered to myself, almost reverently, "Soon they will see. Soon they will understand." And in that moment, I knew it wasn't just the house that had transformed. It was me. The shy, overlooked girl was gone. In her place stood someone unstoppable, someone ready for the final act of revelation. The invitation was casual, almost offhand. I sent it to my parents and Leela with a simple line, "Come by for dinner this Sunday. I'd love to show you something." I could almost hear the smirk on Leela's face as she read it, imagining some modest apartment or underwhelming attempt at sophistication. She would think me harmless, predictable. That was the point. Sunday arrived with a crispness in the air that mirrored my own excitement. I watched through the window as my parents' car pulled up first, followed by Leela's sleek, black sedan. Their expressions were a mixture of curiosity and subtle superiority, as if they were entering a space that was already beneath them. I met them at the door, smiling, warm and calm, heart steady beneath the layers of anticipation. "Wow, this is nice," my mother said, stepping into the foyer. Her words were cautious, tentative, betraying the first flicker of doubt. My father's eyes widened slightly, the smile faltering as he took in the expansive space, the gleaming floors, the airy elegance. Leela, however, was the most interesting. She stopped mid-step, hand frozen on the doorframe, and stared. The usual arrogance was gone, replaced by something I had never seen before, uncertainty. I led them through the house with practiced ease, allowing each room to speak for itself. The living room, bathed in warm afternoon light, felt welcoming yet undeniably sophisticated. The kitchen gleamed like a magazine spread, functional yet elegant. Each detail, the crown molding, the subtle lighting, the carefully curated art, was chosen not for flash, but to reflect my hard work, my taste, my triumph. This is your place," my father asked finally, voice tight. The chuckle that usually accompanied his comments was gone, replaced by a fragile note of incredulity. "Yes," I said softly, almost as if revealing a secret. "It's mine. I designed it, built it, and worked for every penny that made it possible. Every brick, every nail, every choice mine." The room went silent, Leela's face had lost its color, her mouth slightly open in disbelief. My parents exchanged glances, eyes widening as reality began to sink in. The girl they had dismissed, the shadow child who could never match her sister, had done what they claimed was impossible. And she had done it with quiet determination, with patience, and with a sense of pride that refused to seek their approval. I watched Leela's shoulders slump, the subtle arrogance that had always infuriated me replaced with something raw, almost vulnerable. It was the first time I saw her truly speechless, stripped of her shield, and it was beautiful, in a way I never would have admitted aloud before. I took a step closer, voice calm and measured, each word deliberate. You always said I'd never have a house like yours. You laughed, you compared, you dismissed, but here I am. This isn't just a house, it's the life I built despite your doubts, despite your favoritism. I didn't need your approval to succeed, I only needed myself. The words hung in the air, sharp yet free of malice. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's a life so fully realized that the people who doubted you can't ignore it. My mother's eyes glistened, a mixture of pride and shame. My father's jaw tightened, and Leela turned away, pretending to examine a painting, but unable to mask her awe. I let them absorb it, every second stretching into eternity, the silence carrying more weight than any argument ever could. Finally, I smiled almost tenderly. "Welcome to my home," I said. "I hope you enjoy it because I never needed yours to feel at home in the world." And in that moment, I felt it, the release, the triumph, the quiet vindication that no words could ever have given me. I had been invisible once, dismissed, compared, underestimated. But now, standing in the house I had built with my own hands, I was more than seen. I was undeniable, I was unstoppable, I was free,